The Fourth Crusade had ended, not with triumph, but with betrayal. Constantinople, the crown jewel of Christendom, lay in ruins, its golden domes shattered, mosaics trampled underfoot, and streets soaked with the blood of those who should have been allies. The Crusaders had turned their swords on their own, looting and burning what was once sacred. Europe watched, horrified, yet powerless to stop the collapse. The unity of the Church had shattered, and the dream of holy conquest lay in ruins. And yet, in the shadows of this betrayal, the true power struggles of the Holy Land quietly began. To the south, across the harsh deserts of Egypt and Syria, a new force was rising, forged not by kings or popes, but by men who had known only chains and bloodshed. Boys stolen from their homes, trained in the ways of war, raised to obey without question, and tempered by fire and discipline. They were the Mamluks, a military class that would redefine the balance of power in the Middle East. At the center of this rising storm was Baybars, a man who had clawed his way from slavery to command. His name alone inspired fear in Crusader hearts. He was ruthless, brilliant, and patient, qualities that would allow him to reshape the fate of the region. The Crusader states were weak, fractured by greed and ambition. Jerusalem, Acre, Antioch, once bastions of European influence, were hollow shells of their former selves. The soldiers who had once marched under the cross no longer fought for faith. They fought for wealth, for titles, for lands they could call their own. The Holy Land had become a graveyard for ambition, and the Crusaders were oblivious to the storm gathering in the south. From the east came the Mongols, relentless and unstoppable. Cities fell to their might, armies were annihilated, and the West could only watch in fear. But Baybars was not a man who waited for fate, he shaped it. At Ain Jalut, the Mamluk army faced the Mongol horde. The desert stretched endlessly, but Baybars had chosen his ground carefully. Hidden ravines, high ridges, and narrow valleys became the trap that would stop the seemingly invincible Mongols. The thunder of hooves, the clash of steel, and the screams of men echoed across the sands. Baybars commanded with precision, his strategies turning the open desert into a deadly cage. And when the dust settled, the Mongols had been stopped. For the first time, the world saw that their advance was not invincible. Baybars, the Lion of Egypt, had risen. Victory at Ain Jalut was only the beginning. Baybars' gaze turned to the Crusader fortresses that dotted the Levant like scars. Antioch, Caesarea, Jaffa, Acre. Each a symbol of European influence, each a target for the man who understood war not just as combat, but as psychology, manipulation, and inevitability. Baybars did not rely solely on force. Deception became his ally. Letters forged with the seals of Crusader lords, false promises of safe passage, negotiations that lulled defenders into a false sense of security. And when the gates opened, the Mamluk army struck with merciless efficiency. Croix des Chevaliers, the jewel of Crusader fortifications, fell not by siege, but by cunning and strategy. Walls thought unbreakable crumbled under Baybars' intellect. City after city fell. Antioch's defenders were slaughtered. Caesarea's walls were torn down. Jaffa was abandoned before the Mamluk army even arrived. Acre, the jewel of European trade and influence, trembled under the lion's shadow. The Crusaders realized too late that they were no longer the hunters, they were the hunted. Yet Baybars' rule was not merely conquest. Where he went, order followed. Cities rebuilt under his protection, trade reopened, and laws imposed with iron discipline. His victories were not hollow. Every fortress taken, every battle won, strengthened the Mamluk hold over the region. European ambitions crumbled, leaving only whispers of old glory. But while Baybars reshaped the Levant, The Crusaders in Europe squabbled. Kings sent emissaries, popes called for new crusades, armies gathered and dispersed without direction or unity. Old rivalries and jealousies rendered them powerless. The Crusaders, who had once imagined themselves as the chosen warriors of Christendom, now became shadows of their former glory. Even when European fleets sailed to retake key ports, Baybars' intelligence network anticipated them. Ambushes shattered their formations. Coastal raids left them stranded. The Lion of Egypt had thought of everything. Acre finally fell, and with it, the last major Crusader stronghold in the Levant. Baybar's strategy was not driven by hate alone. He understood power and its longevity. He forged alliances with local tribes, incorporated them into his armies, and ensured loyalty through respect and discipline. Cities flourished under his rule, and a sense of stability returned to lands long ravaged by war. Legends of Baybars spread across the Mediterranean. Crusaders whispered his name in fear. Muslim scholars praised his cunning. Merchants and peasants alike recognized his authority. He was no mere warrior. He was a ruler, a symbol, a man who had transformed betrayal and chaos into a rising empire. But even as Baybars consolidated his power, the horizon held new threats. From the east, a small tribe of horsemen observed silently. Neither Crusader nor Mamluk, they were patient and ambitious, waiting for the right moment. History would remember them as the Ottomans, and the stage was slowly being set for their rise. Meanwhile, the Crusader remnants clung to fractured cities, holding out with outdated tactics and misguided loyalty. Europe, exhausted and divided, sent token armies and appeals to the Pope, but unity was impossible. Their failure was complete. Jerusalem and the surrounding lands, once the prize of kings, were now under the firm, disciplined hand of the Mamluks, and their faith alone could not reclaim them. Baybar's campaigns continued for years. Antioch was sacked and its walls reinforced under Mamluk rule. Jaffa became a strategic port. Crusader castles that had once been thought impregnable fell systematically, not only through strength of arms, but through intelligence, strategy, and manipulation. Each victory reinforced his reputation as both warrior and statesman. In the courts of Cairo, Baybars planned far-reaching strategies. Trade routes were protected, armies mobilized, and every conquest was solidified through governance. Unlike the Crusaders, who fought for fleeting glory, Baybars sought permanence. And in doing so, he reshaped the very structure of power in the Middle East. By the end of his campaigns, the Crusaders' ambitions in the East had been utterly destroyed. The cities they had sought to control, the lands they had fought to claim, were now under the firm, disciplined hand of the Mamluks, and their faith alone could not reclaim them. Even as Europe nursed its wounds and planned futile attempts at new crusades, the Mamluks stood unchallenged. Baybar's victories were both a warning and a lesson. The age of the Crusader was over. A new era had begun, one of discipline, intelligence, and relentless determination. But history is never static. From the east, the small but rising Ottoman forces began to stir. Their ambition, patience, and strategy would one day challenge both Mamluk and Crusader alike. The seeds of the next great empire were already being sown, as even Baybar's shadow stretched across the Middle East. The Fourth Crusade had ended in betrayal and shame. But under Baybars, the Crescent would rise from the ashes. Empires fell, kingdoms crumbled, and the dream of a unified Christendom lay in ruins. Yet from this chaos, a disciplined and unstoppable power had emerged, a power that would shape the destiny of the region for generations. The Crusaders had thought themselves invincible. They had believed their faith in swords could conquer any land, but they had underestimated the cunning, discipline, and ambition of a man who had risen from slavery to command an empire. Baybar's name would echo through history. The Mamluks would endure where Crusader castles lay in ruin. And though empires rise and fall, the story of the Crusades would never forget the Lion of Egypt, a man who turned betrayal into power, destruction into strategy, and chaos into order. The Crusades were over. The age of the Mamluks had begun.